Hello friends, and welcome to the second NEET lecture of the topic Principles of Inheritance and Variation. Okay, last time we had completed intragenic interactions, and in that we had seen incomplete dominance, codominance, multiple alleles, and lethal genes. Correct. So now let us start with the next part, which is intergenic interaction. So if you see over here, okay, it is given intergenic interaction. Now what is exactly intergenic interaction? So see, if you remember, okay, intergenic interaction is something which occurs between two alleles. Correct. So if you remember, what are alleles? Alleles are two or more forms of the same gene. Okay, so interaction between two alleles is called as intragenic interaction, whereas intergenic interaction is the interaction between two genes which are not alleles. Correct. Now please remember this. I will show you this because you might have doubts. Suppose if I draw two chromosomes over here. Correct. So I'm drawing two homologous chromosomes. This is one chromosome and there is another homologous chromosome. So homologous chromosomes are the chromosomes which are similar in shape and size. So these two are homologous chromosomes. Now, if I am talking about intragenic, okay. Now what is intragenic? Intragenic is the interaction between two alleles, correct? So normally alleles are present. Suppose if I shade this region and I shade this region, okay. Suppose if I draw capital A over here, I draw small a over here. So this capital A gene is present on this locus, as you can see, and small a is present on this locus. So this is called as same locus, same area, okay. Suppose now if I change the color and I draw another gene over here. Suppose this is capital B and this is small b, okay. So now this is a different locus, this blue color is a different locus, this is, so there are many such loci, okay. Plural of locus is loci. So the interaction between capital A and small a, these are both alleles of each other. So this is called intragenic inheritance or interaction. Now what is intergenic interaction? Intergenic is between two genes which are on separate loci and which are not alleles of each other. Suppose if I am showing interaction between capital A and small b. So capital A is present on different locus, small b is present on different locus. So the interaction between these two is called as intergenic interaction or interaction between capital B and small a. Suppose if I want to show one more gene, suppose if I want to show it on this locus which is green colored locus, suppose capital C small c. Interaction between capital C and small c is intragenic, both are present on same loci of homologous chromosomes, okay. Interaction between capital A and small a, same loci, same locus is this same area, this same area, this same area. So please remember, whenever we are talking about intragenic interactions, it is on the same locus of homologous chromosomes. Whereas if you are talking about intergenic inheritance, the loci are different or different locus. Please remember this. So if I show interaction between capital C and small b, they are not alleles of each other and they are present on separate loci, so intergenic. So please remember, in intragenic the interaction is between alleles, whereas in intergenic the genes which are interacting are non-allelic, they are not alleles of each other. So if you understand this, then you can understand what is the difference between intragenic and intergenic interactions, okay. So I've made it clear. I hope you understand what is locus. So if you see in your book, here they have given intergenic interaction, modification of effect of gene under the influence of non-allelic genes, okay. And they have given the meaning gene at a different locus, okay. It is called intergenic, correct. So I hope you have understood what is intergenic. Intragenic is always on the same locus, okay. Now Now we have to study types of intergenic interactions. Okay, now in your textbook they have given only pleiotropy as the example, whereas over here in MTG they have given many different examples. So we'll be studying that. They are not given in your 12th textbook. Okay, so I'll be explaining them to you. Okay, so let me do one thing. Let me just start afresh. Okay, now so coming to the first type of intergenic interaction given over here is the complementary genes. Okay, now what is the meaning of complementary genes? So okay, sorry. Okay, so what are complementary genes? Now let us first read what is given over here. If two genes present on different loci, see, we are studying intergenic interactions, so there is always going to be this sentence which is going to come different loci. So you don't need to repeat it. You understood, if we are studying intergenic, then the genes are going to be on different loci because they are non-allelic. Okay, now please read this. If they produce the same effect when present alone but interact to form a new trait when present together, they are called complementary genes. Okay, now let us take this example. Suppose if I am showing gene A over here, okay, and I am showing a gene B over here. Now I am using different colors because these are non-allelic. These are present on different loci. So these are two separate genes. So these are showing intergenic interaction. Suppose if this A shows some character, okay, suppose this gene A shows a character called brown colored eyes, okay, and suppose if this gene B, if it is present, then this also shows brown colored eyes. So see, what is the meaning of complementary genes? The meaning of complementary genes is simple. When either of the genes are present alone, okay, so if A is present alone or B is present alone, then they will give brown colored eyes. I am just giving an example. Okay, so if only A is present, that person will have brown colored eyes. If only B is present, that person will have brown colored eyes. However, if a person has both A and B, so suppose if a person has combination capital A, then he will have brown colored eyes. If a person has combination capital B, he will have brown colored eyes, he or she. But if a person has combination A, B, correct, so that means both the genes are coming together. Now what will happen is when both these genes are present together, they will not show this phenotype, they will show something else. For example, this may give rise to say blue colored eyes, example I am giving. Okay, so what is the meaning of complementary genes? Complementary genes when present alone, they show the same phenotype as of each other. A when present alone, B when present alone, they will show same effect. But when they are present together, they will show some other effect only. And these genes are called complementary genes. So when complementary genes come together, they show some other phenotype. When they are present separately, individually both show the same phenotype. Is this clear? Okay, so this is the first example of intergenic interactions. I hope this example is clear. Okay, okay, now let us study the next type given in your book. So I will just scroll this down. Next is supplementary genes. Okay, what is the meaning of supplementary? Supplement means to help or to add. Okay, now what are supplementary genes? I will first explain, then you can read. Again, since this is intergenic interaction, the two genes are non-allelic, they are present on different loci. Okay, now again let us take the examples of gene A and let us take the example of gene B. These are non-allelic. Okay, now in supplementary genes, what is going to happen is this A gene is an independent gene. Okay, so this A gene, suppose if it shows, sorry, this A gene when it is alone, it produces an effect. Okay, so when this A gene is present alone, it can produce an effect. If this A gene is present with B gene also, it can produce an effect. So if this is capital A, then this combination can produce an effect, whatever it is, whatever effect is. And if this combination is capital A capital B also, it can produce the same effect. So this gene is independent, it can function with or without this other gene. However, this gene can produce its effect only when it is present with A. If I write the genotype capital B, then this will not produce an effect. So cannot produce effect. Are you getting my point? Are you getting what I'm trying to say? See, in supplementary genes, one gene is independent, the other gene is dependent. Over here, capital A is independent gene. It will show its effect whether B is present or absent. It is very independent. Whereas this B gene, this is dependent on A. Okay, B cannot show its effect independently. So capital B will not produce any effect, but it has to be with A. So this is called supplementary. So in supplementary genes, one is dependent, one is independent. The dependent gene over here I have shown as B, the other is A. Now let us read what is given in the book. These are non-allelic genes in which one type of gene produces its effect whether the other is present or not. So capital A is producing effect whether the other is present or not. And the second gene, which is supplementary, it produces its effect only in the presence of the first. So this is the supplementary gene. This B gene over here is the supplementary gene. Okay. Do you get my point? So one gene is dependent on other. This interaction is called supplementary. So in complementary, we saw two genes which were non-allelic. This was producing an effect independently. This was producing an effect independently, which was the same. So independently, both these produce the same effect. But when both of these come together, they produce some other effect. So that is called complementary. What happens in supplementary? In supplementary, one gene is independent. So capital A produces an effect whether or not B is present. Whereas B is a supplementary gene, it is a dependent gene, it will produce an effect only when A is present. Correct? So this is called supplementary genes. Now let us come to the next part, which is epistasis. So this is the third example of intergenic interactions. Okay, now first of all, what is the meaning of epistasis? Very important to know the meaning. Okay, so epistasis is basically a condition in which there is a gene which is called as epistatic gene. Okay, now what does this epistatic gene do? This epistatic gene is a powerful or a dominant gene, okay, which masks the effect of any other gene. So this is somewhat similar to Mendel's law of dominance, okay, but it is not exactly that. So if suppose I show two genes, if I say capital A is an epistatic gene, okay, and there is another gene which is capital B. Now if capital A is the epistatic gene, that means it will not allow this other gene to show its effect. Okay, so even if B is present, only this A will show its character or it will show its trait. Suppose if I write another example, if I show small a, if I say that this small a is an epistatic gene, so when this is present, it will not allow any other gene to show its effect. So epistasis, as given over here, is the interaction between genes present at separate loci, because intergenic again, in which one gene suppresses or marks the expression of other gene. So the epistatic gene is powerful, it will not allow the other gene to show its effect. Now there are two types of epistasis. There is dominant epistasis and there is recessive epistasis. So let us study what is the difference between them. Okay, so first I will write the example of dominant epistasis. So what is that? So dominant epistasis is the condition in which the epistatic gene is in dominant condition. So if I say that capital A is a dominant epistatic gene, okay, because as you can see I have written it in capital. So suppose if I want to write this, I can write capital A, capital B, okay. I should change the color of B. And the other way of writing this is I can write it as capital A, small a, capital B. So if you see both these examples over here, you can see I have written both capital A's and here one capital, one small. But since this is dominant epistasis and this capital A is the dominant epistatic gene, so that means this gene will only show its effect. It will not allow the other genes to show. In this case, this is the same gene, so it doesn't matter. But over here, small a cannot show its effect, neither can capital B. So if there is a single copy of a dominant epistatic gene, it will not allow any other gene to show its effect. Whereas if you see recessive epistasis, in recessive epistasis, what happens is the gene causing epistasis is a recessive gene, and as you know, for a recessive gene to show its effect, it has to be present in double quantity. So if I want to show an example of recessive epistasis, I will have to write down small a, and here any other combination you can write. If you want, you can write small a, you can write capital B, small b. But as you can see, in recessive epistasis, the epistatic gene is a recessive gene. Okay, this small a, that is the epistatic gene, and for that to show its effect, it has to be present in double quantity. If I add capital A over here, it cannot show its effect, because you know the recessive gene cannot show its effect in presence of a dominant gene. So please remember, in recessive epistasis, the epistatic gene has to be in double quantity. Whereas in dominant epistasis, single copy of the dominant gene is enough. Okay, and if the epistatic gene is present according to the rules, then it will mask or overpower the expression of other gene. Okay, so that is the third example of intergenic interaction, epistasis. The next example given of intergenic interaction in your book is duplicate genes. Okay, now what is the meaning of duplicate genes? Suppose if I show capital A over here, and I show capital B over here. Okay, now what is the statement given over here? When two pairs of identical alleles are present, what is the meaning of identical alleles? Identical alleles, capital A are identical alleles because both of them are the same. Okay, and if you see over here capital B, then again both are same, so they are identical. If I write capital A, small a, then these are not identical, these are different. So I hope you get the difference between identical alleles and non-identical alleles. So when two pairs of identical alleles are present, either of which is able to produce the character in question, these are said to be duplicate factors. So what they mean to say is this capital A can produce an effect. The same effect can be produced by capital B when they are present alone. So now you might say that what is the difference between duplicate genes and complementary genes, because even complementary genes are doing the same, but complementary genes are not identical alleles. Okay, complementary genes are not identical alleles as given over here. So duplicate genes, this is very, very important to remember that identical alleles are present. Okay, if you want to give if you want to see another example, small a, or over here I can write small b, or I can also write small a, capital B. But please remember, both of them are same. Do not show a hybrid over here. Both the examples are going to be homozygous. So these are the genes which are in identical allele form, and they both of them can produce the same phenotype individually. Okay, so these are called duplicate. So that was the fourth example of intergenic interaction, and the last example is already given in your book. I have already made a video lecture on that, pleiotropy. So just to brush up on that, pleiotropy, the normal example, the example given in your book for pleiotropy is sickle cell anemia, and what is important to remember in that is the two genes. The normal gene is HbA, and people who are suffering from sickle cell anemia or who are carriers, they have the defective gene which is HbS. Okay, and you know the cross between two hybrids will give rise to the ratio which is 2:1. So I'm not going to go into that. If you need to revise, you can go and visit the video lectures on inheritance and variation, which are already uploaded on our channel. Okay, so these are the 5 examples of intergenic interactions. Not very important, but questions can be asked. You don't need to remember those ratios. So you can see over here the table of epistatic ratios is given. It is not important. Okay, and when you have doubts in the MCQs, at that time we will see how this works out. So not important to remember this. Okay, so here we complete the part about intergenic interaction. So all the interactions have been completed, intragenic and intergenic. So that completes one part of the chapter. Now the next part is chromosomal theory of inheritance given by Sutton and Boveri. So again, this has been taught. Highlights of the theory are, so Sutton and Boveri made a few claims. Okay, for example, first of all, each cell is made up of has a nucleus, and inside the nucleus are present chromosomes. Correct. Now they said that the cells are of two types. There are diploid cells and there are haploid cells. And what is the difference between diploid cells and haploid cells? Diploid cells have double number of chromosomes, whereas haploid cells have only a single quantity of chromosomes. For example, in humans, the diploid cells, each one of them have 46 chromosomes, whereas the haploid cells, they have 23 chromosomes. So you know this. So that was the first postulate of the theory, that is what are haploid cells, what are diploid cells. Then they said how are haploid cells formed. So haploid cells are formed through a process called gametogenesis, in which meiosis occurs and the chromosome number reduces to 23. You already know what is meiosis, so I'm not going to go into that. Then they again said how is the diploid condition restored. Very simple. The male gamete, which has got 23 chromosomes, which is the sperm, it fuses with the female gamete, which is the ovum. So what happens is 23 chromosomes plus 23 chromosomes gives rise to a diploid cell which is having 46 chromosomes, called as the zygote. And zygote is the first cell of the new individual. It will again multiply, form embryo, fetus, so on and so forth. So all these points are just mentioned over here. If you want, you can read them. Very important for your board exams. Okay, so this theory was given in 1902 by Sutton and Boveri. So next, now the next part given is regarding linkage. Okay, we have already studied this. First of all, what is linkage? Linkage is the property of genes staying together, as given over here. Okay, so when genes remain together on the chromosome, they are called as linked genes. Okay, now depending on whether the genes stay together or some of them cross over, the linkages are of two types. Okay, and if you remember, there is something called as complete linkage and there is something called as incomplete linkage. Okay, so what is complete linkage? Suppose if this is the chromosome, okay, and I am showing the genes, these 3 genes which are in green, they are present over here. Then what is going to happen is, after gamete formation, all these 3 genes are going to remain over here. on the same chromosome. They are not going to cross over. So that is called as complete linkage. So when none of the genes cross over and they remain on the same chromosome, the phenomena is called complete linkage. Whereas in incomplete linkage, what happens is some of the genes undergo crossing over during meiosis. Okay, so again, this is the chromosome. Okay, and initially if there were 3 genes present, then what happens is after crossing over, say only 1 gene remains, the 2 have crossed over. So if crossing over occurs and all the genes are not linked together, then it is called as incomplete linkage. Okay, so again, depending on which type of chromosome this occurs, they are classified into autosomal and sex linked. Okay, so you know that again, this has already been taught. If you want to revise, you can go to the video lecture which has been uploaded. Okay, now this linkage was shown by Morgan, very important, and the organism used for his experiments was Drosophila melanogaster. Okay, so we'll move ahead. Next, they have explained what is crossing over. Again, this part has been taught. Very important to know when does crossing over occur. So first of all, it occurs during meiosis 1. Okay, and meiosis 1 has got 4 phases: prophase 1, metaphase 1, anaphase 1, and telophase 1. And in prophase 1, again, as you know, there are different phases. The first one is leptotene, the second is zygotene, third is pachytene, fourth is diplotene, and the last one is dikinesis. So it is very important to remember that crossing over occurs in pachytene stage. Okay, and what happens in pachytene? Basically, the 2 homologous chromosomes which are present and which are overlapped with each other, they will exchange genes. Okay, so as you see, these 2 are non-sister chromatids. Genes from this non-sister chromatid will go to this non-sister chromatid. Okay, please remember that only the non-sister chromatids exchange genes. The sister chromatids will not exchange genes. The genes will not transfer from year to year or year to year. Okay, and this transfer of genes is called as crossing over. And because of crossing over, what happens is there is a phenomena called incomplete linkage. If crossing over doesn't happen, then the linkage is complete linkage. Correct? So that part is given over here. Okay, and the chromosomes after crossing over, they are called as recombinants. So they have already highlighted it in the book, or they are also called as crossovers. Okay, so that is about the crossing over and the linkage part. Next part given in your book is about the sex determination. Okay, now there are a few mistakes in the book over here which I would like to point out. First of all, let us revise the types of determination which we have studied. The first type, which is found in mammals and humans, that we studied, was the XXXY type of sex determination, in which the female is homogametic and the male is heterogametic. Correct? So please remember, we always denote the female first and then the male. Okay, so over here in the book they have given the name as XY method. It is actually XX method. Okay, so that is one mistake. And you know the examples. Most of the mammals and some insects like Drosophila show this method, in which the male produces 2 types of gametes and the female produces only 1 type of gamete. The second example which we had studied in your book was the ZWZZ type, in which the female was heterogametic and the male was homogametic. Example is in birds. Okay, so over here they have shown it as the third example. Okay, the ZW, the female produces 2 types of eggs and the male produces 1 type of sperm. Now the third type which we had studied, which we normally see in honeybees, it is called as the haplodiploid type of sex determination. Okay, so if you remember, in haplodiploid type, the female, which is the queen bee, is diploid, whereas the male, which is the drone, is haploid. Okay, so that example we know, and that is haplodiploid, so that is in insects, in bees. Okay, now there are two additional examples given over here. The second method, if you see, that is called as the XXX0 type of sex determination. In this example, the female is homogametic, as you can see, and the male is heterogrammatic. But how is this example different from the first example? Here the male has got two different type of sex chromosomes, whereas here the male has got only one sex chromosome. Okay, so this is given in MTG as X0 method. So it is actually called as XXX0 method, and it is found in roundworms and certain insects. And the fifth method given over here is Z0 method. So that is Z0ZW. Now over here again, this method is similar to the second method, which is ZWZZ, because the female is heterogrammatic, male is, sorry, over here I should write ZZ. So over here again the female is heterogrammatic and the male is homogametic, but please remember the female is having only one type of sex chromosome. Okay, so only Z is present, O is actually 0. So this method is shown again by certain insects like moths and butterflies. So total there are 5 different types of sex determinations. Okay, please remember, normally the female is denoted first. Okay, if I write down 0 or O, that means that male or female is producing only one type of gamete. Okay, so the first example, the first type examples are as given in your book, mammals and Drosophila. Then ZWZZ method, the examples are birds, reptiles and fishes, in which the female is heterogrammatic, male is homogametic. Third example is haplodiploid method, example honeybees, and in this method the fertilized egg develops into females and the unfertilized egg develops into male. So this is also called parthenogenesis. The fourth example is XXX0 method, in which the female is homogametic, male is heterogrammatic, however the male is producing only one type of sex chromosome. Okay, and the fifth is the reverse of that, in which the female is homogametic, the female is heterogrammatic but producing only one type of gamete. Correct? So these 5 methods are given, very simple part. So let's move ahead. Okay, the next part is sex linked inheritance. So this is basically your part of X linked inheritance. Okay, so if you remember X linked inheritance, the examples are color blindness, hemophilia. Okay, and if you remember where these genes are present, then basically there are non-homologous regions and there are homologous regions. Correct? So the genes causing sex-linked inheritance are present on non-homologous region of X or Y chromosome. Correct? So please remember that. So what is given over here? Sex-linked inheritance in the transmission of characters and the determining genes along with sex-determining genes present on sex chromosomes, which are inherited together. Why are they inherited together? Because there is no crossing over. Why is there no crossing over? Because they are present on non-homologous part of the sex chromosome. Again, if you have forgotten this part, it has already been taught. You can go and visit the video lecture. Okay, so there I have compared X and Y chromosomes. It is also given in your 12th standard textbook. So please make sure that that concept is clear. I'm not going to teach that same part again. So these genes are present on non-homologous part of X or Y chromosome. Genes which cross over, they are present on homologous part of X chromosome or Y chromosome. Correct? Okay. Now, criss-cross inheritance. What is criss-cross inheritance? Criss-cross inheritance is the phenomena in which, suppose there is a colorblind male, then this male will pass the defective gene to female, and the female will again pass the defective gene to male. Or suppose if the female has a defective gene, she will pass the gene to a male, and again that male will pass to a female. So this inheritance is called crisscross, because male is passing the gene to female, female is again passing it to male, or female is passing to male, male is again passing it to female. So this is called as a crisscross inheritance. Okay, so this is mostly seen in X-linked genes. Y-linked genes do not show crisscross because a male will always transfer it to his son, and so on. So that is not crisscross. Now there are two terms which are given over here. If you see, the terms given are digynic, okay, and there is something called as diandric. Okay, now what is digynic? Digynic is the term in which the female is basically passing the gene. So she is getting the gene from a male and she is passing it to another male. This condition is called as digynic. Okay, so this condition, diagynic, so if the female is in between, then it is called digynic. Whereas if a male is collecting a gene from the female and passing it to another female, then this condition is called as diandric. So please don't get confused. For example, over here you are seeing two males. Androecium is andric, gynoecium is gynic. You know, androecium is male, gynoecium is female. But don't think that there are two males over here, so this is diandric. Okay, it is not di, it is dia. So diagynic matlab through the female, diandric matlab through the male. Okay, so crisscross inheritance. I hope these words are clear. Okay, now the next part. The next part in your book is related is mutation. Now your textbook doesn't have much information related to mutation. Okay, so what are basically mutations? See, I will try to explain this in a very easy way. Your chromosomes are basically called DNA, right? And if I draw DNA over here, okay, suppose this is one end 5 prime, this is another end 3 prime, and these are the nucleotides present, A, G, C, T. Okay, now suppose for some reason what happens is this T over here, okay, this nucleotide changes to say C, then this change in the sequence of nucleotide is called as mutation. Okay, so mutation is basically change in sequence of nitrogen bases or change in sequence of nucleotides. Correct? Now why is this very important to study? Because now I'll give you an example. Suppose this is the nucleotide sequence G A G. Okay, these three nucleotides are present. So this is called as a codon, and if you remember, codons are basically three nucleotides present on the mRNA, messenger RNA. Now this codon GAG gives rise to an amino acid called glutamine or glutamic acid. Now what happens is there is one mutation which occurs in which this adenine is replaced by uracil and this sequence becomes GUG. Now what happens is this codon doesn't produce glutamine but it produces valine. Okay, now these are the amino acids which I am showing. Glutamine is an amino acid, valine. We'll learn about this in protein synthesis. Okay, the chapter which is going on molecular basis of inheritance. So what happens is because of a change in a single nucleotide, what is happening is a different amino acid is being produced. Okay, now this can be useful also, mutation, they can be harmful also, or they might not make any difference. Okay, for example, if this A gets mutated to G, then the sequence will become GGG. But this triple G, this also produces the same amino acid. So then it doesn't make a difference whether the nucleotide is A or G because it is going to produce the same amino acid. So depending on the type of mutation, it can be harmful, neutral or beneficial. So I hope you have understood what is mutation. Basically the change in the nucleotide sequence is called as mutation. Okay, so over here what have they given? Mutation is the sudden inheritable discontinuous variation. Okay, okay, which appears in an organism due to permanent changes in genotype. Okay, now they have given the types of mutations: deletion, duplication, translocation, inversion. Okay, so what are the type of mutations which may occur in a chromosome? Okay, the first example given is deletion. What does deletion mean? Suppose if this is your original chromosome, okay, and what happens is after mutation some of the part of the chromosome is deleted, so I am rubbing this part off. This is called as deletion. So some of the nucleotides are lost over here. Okay, second example is duplication. Okay, so now suppose if this is your original chromosome, okay, and what happens is there is duplication which is occurring. So what happens in duplication is one part gets duplicated. So what will happen is this part will again duplicate and it will attach over here, so this will become longer, so that is called duplication. So here in duplication additional nucleotides are being added, in deletion nucleotides are being deleted. Okay, so this is called as duplication. Then there is something called as translocation. So what is exactly going to happen in translocation is you have got this one chromosome and this is the next chromosome. In translocation there will be deletion from this chromosome and that deleted part will be added over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rub out some part of this chromosome. So I have rubbed this off, and that part which has been removed from this chromosome, it is going to attach over here, so it has moved over here. So this is called translocation. Okay, so deletion, loss of chromosome, part of chromosome; duplication, duplication of a particular nucleotide sequence; translocation, loss of nucleotide sequence from one chromosome which gets attached to another chromosome. Then there is inversion. A very simple example of inversion is 5 prime 3 prime. I write the sequence ATGC. What happens in inversion is the polarity or direction remains the same but the sequence is reversed. So here I will write CGTA. So the direction is same but the sequence is reversed. That is called as inversion. Okay, so have you understood these 4 types of mutation? In deletion there will be loss of nucleotides, the chromosome will break. In duplication the same sequence of the chromosome will be repeated and attached to the chromosome. Then the third is translocation, in which one chromosome will lose a part and that part will be attached to another chromosome. And inversion, the nucleotide sequence will be reversed. Okay, so these are the 4 types of mutations given in the book. Okay, again when we solve the MCQs related to this, you will realize that this topic is very easy, so I am rushing through it. Next they have given related to the chromosome number. This part we have already done. Okay, so what is euploidy, what is aneuploidy? So if you remember euploidy, then euploidy is basically when the chromosomes are present in multiples. If the chromosome is present as single copy, then it is called haploidy or monoploidy. If there are 2 copies, then diploidy; 3 copies, triploidy. So if you remember this, your euploidy is further divided into monoploidy, or it is also called as haploidy, single copy of chromosomes. Then there is something called as diploidy, 2 copies of chromosomes. So this is N, this is 2N, and then there is something called as polyploidy. So that is 3N, 4N, 5N, etc. Correct? So this is when the chromosomes are present in exact multiples. What is aneuploidy? Aneuploidy is a condition in which chromosomes are not present in exact multiples. Okay, so in aneuploidy you may have extra chromosomes or you might have loss of chromosomes. So if you want to see the types of aneuploidy, okay, in aneuploidy you might have examples like 2n minus 1, you might have examples like 2n minus 2, this is indicating loss of chromosomes. Whereas you might have examples of 2n plus 1, you might have examples of 2n plus 2. This is indicating addition of chromosomes. Correct? So again they have given the 4 types of aneuploidy. Okay. Trisomy is when you are having one additional chromosome. So this is trisomy. Okay. When you are having 2 additional chromosomes, it is tetrasomy. Okay. When one chromosome is lost, it is called monosomy, and when 2 chromosomes are lost, it is called nullisomy. Okay, so you know this. We'll be studying examples also. Okay, for example, monosomy is an example of monosomy is basically Turner syndrome, in which one X chromosome is lost. Okay, example of trisomy is Down syndrome, Edwards syndrome. So many examples are there. Again, addition of an additional X chromosome, so that is 2n plus 1 Klinefelters, that is also trisomy. So this we have already done. So this is about the number of chromosomes. Okay, now coming to the next part, which is given in your MTG, it is gene mutations. Okay, so what are the reasons why do genes mutate? So they may mutate suddenly or because of an external factor. Now external factors may be either ultraviolet rays, or there are chemicals which induce mutations called as mutagens. Okay, so that part we'll learn in some of the later chapters. So mutations can occur spontaneously without any reason. Okay, and these are called as spontaneous mutations as given over here. Okay, some of them may be produced by external factors such as UV rays or chemicals. Okay, so two types of mutations are present: spontaneous or mutations caused by external factors, and these are called induced mutations. Okay, so if we want to summarize this, then mutations are of two types. Okay, first type is spontaneous. These are the mutations which occur spontaneously without any particular reason, and the other type of mutations are called as induced mutations. They are induced due to external factors such as UV rays. Okay, then factors such as chemical mutagens are the substances which cause mutations. Okay, so that is the part showing types of mutations. Now they have given another word called point mutation. Okay, so what is point mutation? Point mutation is the mutation in which only there is a single nucleotide which is changing. Again, I will show the example of this DNA. 5 prime, 3 prime, the sequence is G, G, C, C, C. Okay, and what happens to this sequence is, because of mutation, this sequence becomes G, 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 C, C. I am showing an example of deletion. This I have deleted this nucleotide. So what is the difference between these two DNAs? The only difference is that this C is missing. So there is a change only in one nucleotide, and these type of mutations are called point mutations. Suppose if I rub this C's off. Now if you see the difference, there are 3 C's missing over here. So this is not point mutation. Here there are 3 nucleotides which are changed. So point mutation is a mutation in which only one nucleotide changes. So if I want to give an example, then I will remove only one C. If you remove one nucleotide, that is point. Now mutation from wild to new type is called forward mutation, whereas mutated to wild is called backward mutation. Now what is a wild gene and what is a mutated gene? Please remember, the original gene is called as the wild gene. Okay, and the genes which evolve from the original genes are called as mutated genes. Okay, for example, if we take suppose that we say that there is a gene I, and this I gene is the wild gene, and this wild gene is undergoing mutations and it is forming three types of genes, IA, IB and I0, and these are called as mutated genes. Okay, so formation of mutated genes from wild genes, this mutation is called as forward mutation. Whereas if any of these genes again convert back to the wild type, it is called reverse mutation. This is something like a test cross or a back cross. Back cross is when you cross the F1 generation with any of the parent. You are going reverse. So forward is this direction from wild to mutated, and reverse is going from mutated to wild. Okay, so those words are given over here. So we have completed this mutation part as well. Okay, now if you see the next part, I am going to I'm going to teach you pedigree analysis, but this part which is there, gene related disorders, we have already studied this, so I'm not going to teach you this. You know what is color blindness, you know what is hemophilia. Hemophilia is a pleader's disease. Okay, and that is because of the deficiency of a protein called plasma thromboplastin. Thromboplastin is a protein which helps in clotting of blood. When that protein is not present in proper quantities, the blood clotting or coagulation is doesn't occur, and because of that, the person continues to bleed. Okay, so that is there. Sickle cell anemia, you already know, HbA, HbS, both the variants are present. Now, what you don't know in sickle cell anemia is, in a normal person, what happens is the sequence which is present. I am talking about sickle cell anemia. So in sickle cell anemia, basically a normal person, okay, a person who is not suffering from sickle cell anemia, he will have HbA gene. Okay, and in this gene the sequence of nucleotide is GAG. So a normal person will have GAG sequence which produces amino acid called as glutamine or glutamic acid. This is for a normal person. Now what happens is, in people suffering from sickle cell anemia, you know that the gene present is HbS. But why is this HbS gene produced? It is produced because of a point mutation. And where is the point mutation occurring? It is occurring in this adenine. So this GA becomes GUG. And what happens is, because of this single mutation, point mutation, this codon gives rise to a different amino acid called valine. So in people suffering from sickle cell anemia, glutamine is not produced, valine is produced, and because of that change, they have this defective gene HbS. Okay, so that is the extra information given over here. You know the ratio is 2:1. PKU also you know. So basically in PKU what happens is, the amino acid phenylalanine, correct? This phenylalanine amino acid. So normally phenylalanine is written as PLA. So this phenylalanine is converted into tyrosine. This is in normal human beings. Okay, but in people suffering from phenylketonuria, this phenylalanine is not converted into tyrosine because of that enzyme which is absent, phenylalanine hydroxylase over here. Now why is this PLA converted into TYR? Because this is toxic in increased concentration. So that is why body converts PLA into tyrosine. But people suffering from PKU, they cannot convert this because phenylalanine hydroxylase is absent. Okay, and because of that what happens is, these people have increased amounts of phenylalanine, because of which ketone bodies are produced, and since they are harmful, they are excreted in the urine. That is why it is called phenylketonuria. Correct? So you know this. So the same thing is there. Even thalassemia has been taught. It is because of change in alpha or beta chains of hemoglobin, and because of that the structure becomes unstable. Correct? So all these parts have been taught, so I'm not going to go into that. The next part is chromosomal abnormalities. The first two examples which they have given are of trisomies. So a trisomy is a condition in which one extra chromosome is present. The chromosome number becomes 47. Down syndrome, you already know. Chromosome number 21st is present thrice. Okay, so additional 21st chromosome, the features are already written over here. Now the next syndrome that is not given in your book, there is another trisomy called Edwards syndrome, which is trisomy of chromosome number 18. So chromosome 18 will be present in 3 quantities. Now the features which are given, clinical features, in that there is one feature which they have given as horseshoe or double kidney. Now for that I have actually downloaded an image. If you see over here on the left side, these are the kidneys of a normal person, and a person who is suffering from Edwards syndrome, he will be having a horseshoe kidney. So both the kidneys are actually connected with each other, so that is a horseshoe. Okay, so most of you will ask me what is a horseshoe kidney, and if you see the other symptoms given over here, so multiple congenital malformations of many organs. Congenital is something which is present from birth. So many organs are having malformations from birth. Okay, then receding mandible, small eyes, mouth, I think that is self-explanatory. Severe mental deficiency, congenital heart defects. So all that is given. Questions are not asked on this, but please remember Edwards syndrome is trisomy 18. There is one more trisomy called Cry-Du-Chat, which is trisomy 13. It is not given over here. Next example is Turner syndrome. Turner syndrome is a monosomy. One X chromosome is missing in females. You know the clinical features. The sexual characters are degenerated in them. Webbing of neck is present. Okay. So they are usually sterile, that is they cannot produce gametes. So you know that. Then Klinefelter's is an example in which additional X chromosome is present. Okay, so these are also called as feminized males, and the characters, the gonads present are normally testes, but they are underdeveloped. Okay, and because of the extra X chromosome, they may show female like characters, for example development of breasts. Okay, so Klinefelter syndrome also we have studied in detail, addition of one extra X chromosome. So chromosome number is 47. So we have completed the chapter. Now I want to highlight this part which is given in your book. Okay, and that is related to pedigree analysis, because this topic is not there in your 12th textbook, but it is given in NEET. So first of all, what is the meaning of pedigree? Okay, so basically as given over here, pedigree is a chart showing a record of inheritance of certain traits for two or more ancestral generations of human beings or domesticated animals in the form of a family tree. So all the examples which we will be studying, they will be related to humans. Okay, now for you to understand what is a pedigree chart, you have to know some of the symbols which are present. Okay, for example, when I am drawing a pedigree chart, suppose if I draw this square box. Now this is a male. So when I am drawing a pedigree chart, a male will be denoted by a square box. If I want to denote a female, then she will be denoted with a circle. Okay. Now suppose if I shade this male, then this is an indication that the male is affected. Okay, so affected indicates that that male is suffering from disease. So say for example, this male is a male with normal vision, and this male is a male having color blindness. So I will show the box as shaded. Similarly, if I want to show an affected female, I have to shade the circle, so that denotes affected female. Now when you are showing the cross between a male and female, normally in terms of pedigree charts, it is shown like this. Box and the circle are connected with a single line. Okay, so this indicates crossing of male and female. Okay, you remember we do crosses XY into XX. That same thing, when you want to show in a pedigree, you will show it like this. This single line means that there is a cross. Okay, and if you want to show the children, so if you remember, this will give two males and two females. So the children are basically denoted like this. 1 2 3 4, one male, second male, sorry, first female, second female. So do you get this, how a pedigree chart is represented? Okay, so this is a male unaffected, female unaffected, two males unaffected, two females unaffected. Suppose if I want to show that the cross is between a male who is affected and the female which is unaffected, then I will shade this male. Suppose if I want to show that one of the boys is affected, then I will shade that. So if you shade the symbol, that means they are affected. If you do not shade, they are not affected. Now the next question is, how do you show a carrier in X-linked disease? If you remember, if I want to show a female as a carrier, then normally for carrier the symbols are, you have to draw a circle, you can, then you have to draw a small dot inside it, or you can draw a circle and you have to half shade it. Okay, so you can use any symbol for a carrier. Carrier can be a circle and a dot. Obviously females are carriers over here, and a circle and half shaded. If you want to show an autosomal disorder, okay, if autosomal recessive disorder is present, then even males can be carriers. So in that case, you can half shade the square box or you can put a circle. Okay, so if I want to show the cross between a colorblind male and a carrier female, then I will show it like this. What will happen if the male is colorblind and the female is carrier? Then what will be the offspring? So I will write a small c over here, I will write a capital C and a small c over here. Okay, so if you see the females, one female will be carrier, one will be affected. So how will I show? I will show this as the affected female and this as the carrier, correct? And what will happen to the male? One will be normal, one will be affected. So normal and affected. So do you understand how this cross is shown? Now these are the parents, this is the first generation, this is first, next generation is second, generation after that will be third. If I want to show this individual, I will give the number 1, number 2, this will be 1, this will be 2, 3, 4. So if I want to speak about this daughter, then I will write her as 2-3. So second generation, third offspring. Are you getting my point? Okay. Now, suppose if I want to show that this son is married with another female, then how will I show that? It's very simple. I will show a female over here and I will show a dash. But this female is not the daughter of these two, so I am not going to include her in this. Okay, are you clear? And then again I will draw a line and show their offsprings. So this is called as pedigree analysis. Okay, now in some examples they show the mating between brothers and sisters, that is called as consanguineous marriage. For example, if I show the mating between these two and I draw a line, this is called consanguineous. And if I want to show this, I have to draw two lines. That means the marriage or mating is between the brother and sister who have the same parents. So normally these examples are not there in your book, but please remember, if you want to show normal mating, then it is like this. If you want to show consanguineous mating, then there is double dash. Consanguineous is between siblings or between brothers and sisters. Is this clear? Okay. And in this case, if you see both are affected, all the children obviously will be affected. So this is your pedigree analysis, and based on this you are going to solve problems. So I hope you have understood what this pedigree analysis is. Okay, and if you want, I can show you an entire list of pedigree analysis symbols. I will just search over here, okay, and you can see the symbols which are shown. Wait, let me just see. Because there are many different symbols given over here. Okay, Yes, let us see this. So it's also they have given this as a presentation. I want an image actually. So I'll save the image and then we'll open the image. So if you see this image, yes, so see, as I told you, the male is shown as a box, female circle, mating, then the children are shown. Now this is not important for you. If the children are twins, then these slant lines are given: dizygotic, monozygotic. Okay, dizygotic is a condition in which one zygote splits into two, and monozygotic is uh, sorry, dizygotic is in which two different eggs are released and they are fertilized to form zygotes, whereas monozygote is a condition in which one zygote splits into two. Now when you show this rhombus, that means the sex is unspecified. So if they ask you a question in which they do not reveal the gender, that means you have to write it as unidentified. Affected, you know, if you write the number in the box, that means that is the number of males or females. If you don't have space, then this is a carrier, so I have shown circle or this. Death is this. These symbols are not important for you. Abortion not important. So see, this cross is shown. In this cross, the male is unaffected, female is affected, and out of the children, this child is affected. And consanguineous, I have shown this. So these are the symbols. Okay, you will be solving the MCQs. So we have basically completed this entire chapter of principles of inheritance and variation. Okay, and the parts which I have not gone into detail, they have already been taught, so you can have a look at the lectures over there which have been uploaded. And this pedigree part, when you study the questions, you will have doubts, we will discuss them. So I'm going to give you 2 days to solve the questions. Okay, and after those 2 days we are going to have another lecture, that is a discussion lecture. So today is Monday, so I will give you Tuesday and Wednesday, and Thursday I will keep a live lecture, or I might record it. I think I'll keep a live lecture, and you have to keep your MCQ doubts ready. So today, after going through this video lecture, you will be solving all the MCQs in your MTG. We have completed this chapter, Principles of Inheritance and Variation, and whatever doubts you have to keep them ready. Thursday I am going to take a live lecture and you are going to tell me the doubts. I will have my MTG with me, so I will solve all the doubts. Okay, and then about your normal 12th standard lectures, your normal 12th standard lectures will resume from tomorrow or day after tomorrow. So we had completed, I think, Michelson and Stahl experiment. We are going to continue after that. Since I don't have the board available with me right now, I'm going to make the lectures on the tablet, this method which I'm using. Okay, so if you have any doubts, please let me know, and I want the questions to be ready on Thursday. You are having 2 days. Whatever doubts you have, please leave them. There will be many questions on linkage. Okay, so I will show you how to solve those questions. Most of the questions are on crosses, which are simple. So we have finished this entire chapter, and I'll be expecting you ready with your questions on Thursday. Okay, the lecture timing I will let you know. It is going to be mostly a live lecture. Okay, so that's it for today, and thanks for listening.